Beautiful. All right. So I am really delighted to be here with you today. Again, whether it's live or watching the replay. And I'm just so excited to share with you this healing modality that has, like I said in the post, it's just completely changed my life and the course of my life and all the things. So it's just really incredible. And yeah, I guess I'll just introduce myself. But I wanted to say thank you to Kylie, our fearless leader in this space, for creating the space. And the energy here is just so beautiful. I always love going live into this group and watching live in this group. Hi, Caroline. Oh, thank you for saying hello. And also, love sunshine, love sunflowers. I'm a Leo sun, and I always feel like that's like my flower, my like soul flower. So thank you for posting that. But yeah, Kylie, the energy in this group is so beautiful and receptive and open-minded and just, inspiring. So thank you for creating it and letting us come into this space and share. For those of you I haven't connected with yet or met, my name is Beth Porter. I am the face behind Earth and Ether, which is my intuitive healing and spiritual branding practice. So I do both. I work with two types of people. So, on one hand, I help conscious entrepreneurs build and step into their authentically aligned brands through healing and branding. And then I also work with soul purpose seekers. So people that are really just trying to connect more deeply to their purpose and live a life that, is more peaceful and joyful and happy and, feels like you're living on purpose rather than just letting life kind of, shake you. Not that that doesn't happen anyway. Hi, Tao. Are you still on vacation? I'm honored that you're here. um, so this work really, we'll touch on this a little bit later, but in this work, I help people heal old traumas and wounding, limiting beliefs, shit they've been carrying for their lineage. I think many of us here are, kind of, I see this like major awakening of a lot of us being the ones who are doing the massive healing for our families. Like my family doesn't do this work, but in my sessions, it's like a lot of family shit that comes through. Oh, yay, Tao. I hope you're enjoying your vacation. Everything looks fun according to Facebook. Um, so anyway, that's what I do. And the modality I work with is called EPT, and it stands for Emotional Polarity Technique. I saw that somebody asked if it's different than EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping, and it is quite different. And I'll discuss that a little bit later, just to help understand that. But yeah, EPT is, well, I'll just also get this out there. I hate the name of it. So I used to not talk about it. I used to just call it, I do healing sessions and I only hate the name of it because of, you know, that, what is it called? Like the emergency pregnancy test or whatever that is. So I always get it. Like I used to just I would tell people this is what I do. And they would be like, wait, isn't that the pregnancy test? Unfortunately, this has been around for about 25, 27 years, maybe even more by now. But, and I think that test came out later, but it kind of took the market share. So I usually say emotional polarity technique, and it's a beautiful trauma informed modality. And like I said, it's not super well known. So my intention today is to bring it to your awareness. And like I've said before, it's by far been the most powerful and potent healing modality that I've ever experienced. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, I found EPT actually in 2013 after leaving a 10-year abusive, really abusive, toxic relationship with my high school sweetheart. And I began working through my own childhood traumas and old wounds, generational patterning, that kept me from having peace and agency over my life. It was interesting because even after our separation and I was having like the time of my life, I met my husband, I was just like, I was 27, I was like partying. It was just really, I was having a blast. I had a good job, all those things. But I was continuing to experience these like tremendous, secretly experiencing these tremendous self-esteem issues, anxiety and depression that I had thought would go away after I left that relationship. And, kind of just tried to throw everything out in the bathwater, basically. And that did not work. And, it just became very clear to me very quickly that this was my shit and I had some work to do. And I was looking for something that would take me there and be effective. And I had tried talk therapy in the past and I didn't like it. I am a Virgo rising and have a lot of Gemini in my chart. I am really good at analyzing the fuck out of my situation. So I don't really need somebody to just like repeat what I'm saying back to them. And yeah, when I worked with the talk therapist times before, the woman that I worked with convinced me to stay in my toxic relationship. So, and I just didn't feel safe with her. So I knew I needed something else. I also want to say that I think that everything has a place. I just am the kind of person that really wanted to like investigate and remove. Like I just knew that there was something in front of me that was keeping me from just like being who I really am, if that makes sense. But I couldn't really, it just felt like this invisible force. I couldn't really understand what it was. So, oh, hi, Amanda. Thanks for hopping on. So anyway, after receiving EPT, I found it, kind of came to me actually, and never looked back. And over time, over the next few years, I had maybe several or whatever. I think we all have several spiritual awakenings, but I had a very potent spiritual awakening while I was receiving EPT and learning how to connect with my intuition, really. And I just felt the call, like I was sick of doing corporate design work, and I really wanted to share EPT with everyone that I knew. So it was funny because I would be in session with my healer, and she'd be working on me, and I would just have these thoughts of, she'd be like muscle testing my body, and I would be like, oh, I just want to do this for Jen. I just want to do this for Johnny. I just want to, whoever in my life. I like had this thought, and that would happen for like over a couple of years before I decided to like, oh, I'm going to shift career. Like I'm going to do this. So in 2017, I decided to pursue training and certification to become an EPT practitioner, which is a pretty intense process and took me about 3 years to complete. And, since then I've been practicing EPT with private clients for a couple of years, and yeah, just really excited to share with you today. So please feel free to ask questions. I know I'm on a little bit of a delay. I'll be keeping my eye on the comments. And, let me know if you've had an experience with EPT. I'd love for you to share as well. And this gets to be, dialogue and conversation. So I'll keep my eye on the comments. As a generator, I really like to have things to respond to. So, okay. So about EPT, basically, in a session, we are releasing stuck emotional patterns from your body, freeing your system up to allow essentially life force energy and unconditional love, which I think are one and the same source, to flow through your system without blockages. And that looks like being in full acceptance of who you are. That looks like wholeness. A lot of us in this space, in the healing space, talk about, reclaiming these parts of ourselves and honoring those scared parts of ourselves that we've maybe shattered or separated from due to shame. And this is, another practice to bring all of that back into wholeness. But at first, before diving into like what EPT is, I think it's helpful, and I do this with my branding clients too. What are you and what are you not? Sometimes understanding what something is not really creates that negative space in which something else exists. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what EPT is not. So first, you might be familiar with mindset work, especially in this group, like understanding that you may have mindset blocks or limiting beliefs. And so the intention with that work is to try and reframe those narratives to more positive and nourishing ones that, tracks in the direction of what you're desiring and how you want to shift. And we try to imprint them by consciously bringing them into your life, standing in front of a mirror and saying your mantras over and over again, or writing your positive affirmations and sticking them on your post-it note and putting them on your wall, making sure you see them, until it becomes your reality. And I have a little bit of beef with this concept, and maybe a little bit of a contrarian view on it. Because with these mindset tools, the way that they're widely spoken about, I think, really lacks nuance and lacks speaking about where they fit in and where they are the most beneficial. And totally doesn't talk about how that can really fuck with your psyche. If your body doesn't feel safe saying, I am a beautiful woman, there's a reason why it doesn't feel safe. And so if you're trying to just like force yourself, essentially force the psyche, that's like, it can be dangerous. And, you know, I think it can perpetuate the problem that you're trying to resolve. And I've actually experienced that. So I'll go into that in a minute. But it completely skips over actually trying to understand where the said mindset block or limiting belief comes from and where it lives in your subconscious. Why is it here? Why is it, what is its role in my life? What's that limiting belief's role in your life? How is it keeping you safe? Is it a deeply rooted belief or is it more of a surface level thing? Then maybe mindset work makes a little bit of sense. But let's say you're struggling with something that you can't get a handle on. So for me, a huge part of my journey, and if we've met before, you probably already heard me talk about this. So, you can roll your eyes and just take a minute pause. But I have, struggled with this. I struggled with cystic acne all across my chin, only in my chin, for 17 years. So literally half my life. And it was awful. And I tried several mindset tools and law of attraction and Lacy Phillips' work when she first started. Like I was on it. I am like self-development queen. And what's interesting is no one in my family had this issue. None of my friends had this problem that I knew of. I kept it deeply secret. I became very good at makeup and covering it up and all that stuff. And just continued to get smaller and smaller and retreating within myself. So with my skin, I really had to get under it. Like I had to get to the root, kind of no pun intended, but yeah, to the root of the issue. And then once those firmly held beliefs that and stories and deep, I mean, this went into like my mom's lineage. I had no idea that this was so deeply connected and why I was the person that had the problem. It was really hard. But once I was able to, heal and resolve my loyalty to my family system and loosen those beliefs, the next step was to allow a relationship to my rage. I was carrying a lot of rage that was mine from traumatic upbringing, but also that relationship, of course. But also like rage in both my parents' sides have just tons of like repressed rage from, generations. And so it was just a lot of generational healing that needed to happen as well, needed to be released and honored. And if you think about it, I mean, from a cystic acne standpoint, it's kind of like little mini volcanoes on your skin, where like toxins need to come through and come out. And anyway, that's a little bit graphic, but it's sort of like, rage needing to be expressed, someone who, especially I just grew up, being praised for being like a good little girl. So of course I'm not going to be comfortable with my rage, right? So anyway, then my skin started getting better. And then I worked with a skin coach. And then I layered on positive affirmations. Like then I used the mindset tools because by that point I was starting to see, I had the inkling of seeing that it was possible that I could change, that it was possible for me to wake up like I do now and really not be concerned with my skin at all, just to trust that it can handle itself and, all those things, which is really, really crazy. So I kind of see mindset tools like trying to push a car that isn't starting. First you need to like get it into neutral. So that's what we're doing with emotional polarity technique. We're releasing the blockages. We're opening up to your neutral, natural state, which is optimal flow, right? So we need to get you into neutral and then get the car pointed in the right direction or moving in the right direction by pushing it a little bit. And then you jump in and you keep going. You have that momentum. I see those tools, if you're working with something that is deep, those tools are great once you have already made that shift happen. And if you're really stuck, you need something else. And anyway, so does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. Like I said, I know I'm in a little bit of a delay or I'm a little bit of ahead, so I'll keep checking the comments. So before I go further and get into what a session really looks like and more specifics about EPT, I want to be clear that I don't disagree with mindset work at all. I just don't think it works when there's something else driving the subconscious beliefs that really need resolution. And I take the position that your issues, what's coming up for you, like my cystic acne or like chronic depression or even weight, are here to get your attention. They're here to help heal something deep within you or your system, your family system, or both. So how it all works in an EPT session, we tune into your body. So we ask your body where, to understand where is the root of this energetic pattern, the blockage. And I use muscle testing to do this. So many of you here are probably really familiar with muscle testing by this point. I think Kylie talks about it quite a bit. But then once we figure out like where it is in your body, what organs are holding what emotions and what emotions we need to be focusing on right now, then we discover what the story is there. So together we release that pattern from your body and resolve the root issue by honoring it. So to release it, we literally test your system to see, let's say it's rage in my liver. I ask your liver what it needs to be supported so that we can get rid of this blockage. And so we take care of the liver as it needs, and we do some breathing to help move it out. And we've opened up space. But then we need to resolve that so that the psyche doesn't want to go back to that pattern or recreate that pattern. And we resolve that, original story, and oftentimes this goes back to your childhood. Sometimes it's past life, sometimes it's generational. I just had a client that had ADHD, and it wasn't even hers, and it went back 3 generations on her dad's side. So we had to do some healing around that. And now she doesn't identify with having ADHD. Anyway, I digress. So we figure out what that root story is, and we move out the emotions that are associated, and then we honor it by looking at the truth of it and what those underlying beliefs you have been carrying about that. And we work with forgiveness, forgiving yourself for believing that you had to be this way or live this way in order for you to stay safe or be loved, forgiving those who have hurt you, forgiving those people that you have hurt, like really holding the space to release and honor the situation. Sometimes you're forgiving people, parents usually, who couldn't be there for you when you needed them because, you could have like the greatest parents in the world and nobody's perfect, and it's impossible to know what someone needs all the time, right? And I believe it's part of our, the human experience to have pain. So, but anyway, all of it, depends on your specific story, of course. And then we look at if there's trauma. So, which in my experience, in my sessions, about 90% of what I do has a trauma component. We address that trauma specifically, whether it's phase 1 trauma or phase 2 trauma. And I'm not going to go into a deep dive about trauma today. I'm already feeling like I'm on a soapbox by talking about mindset work, but please, please, please do not do trauma work alone. Please don't take your trauma through a guided meditation or alone, or like one of Lacey Phillips's DIs or something. It's really not safe. It's, the reason that we code something as traumatic is because on some level we felt like we were alone in the situation, whether you were emotionally alone, couldn't go to your 2 years old, something happens to you, you can't go to mom and dad and say, this happened to me and it hurt, right? Or you don't have the faculty to really understand what's going on. Or maybe you're actually alone. Maybe something, happened to you alone. Maybe you witnessed a car accident and your mom and dad weren't there, maybe you had I don't know why this is coming forward, but I had a client that had a major injury happen when he was playing baseball. And that was the start of all of his chronic pain that he experienced as an adult. So we had to really go in there and deal with him not being supported in that moment because his parents weren't at that game. Anyway, so please don't do it alone. Anyway, once we address the trauma, resolve the conflict, we then introduce a new place for your psyche to attach to. So I think if this is the old place and the old brain, then we shift and your psyche can really understand and have space for, because we've opened up space in your system, have space for a new story, a new reality for you to step into. And we do that, we need to move all those things out first. But again, it's really important to create that new space, because our brains are going to go back to what it's used to. We're essentially like in a session training your brain and your nervous system, and your psyche and your body, everything to all be fully resourced. That's the trauma work, because when you have trauma, either one side of your brain is overactivated and dropped out, or they're both dropped out. We want everybody to be here, fully resourced and nervous system stabilized, so that you can create a new reality, a new way forward. And, whatever that narrative is that we connect with, it is in alignment, with the truth of who you really are and what you desire in the world, and, gives you permission to truly allow love and life to flow through your system. So again, going back to that concept that these emotional blockages kind of like they actually take up physical mass in your body. And I'm guessing many people in this space already know that very clearly. So we're just, I like to think of it as like a hose. Like my internal system is like this one big hose, and it has kinks in it. And so it's like loosening and opening up the kinks to allow love to flow and acceptance. And that's how the transformation happens, from the root, from the source of the wound, from the actual, beginning where it started, and from seeing that pain and shame and really holding it in love. And I know this can sound, be scary and vulnerable. And that's why I'm here, to help guide you through it in a place of safe, grounded, unconditional love. And it's also no shame in being nervous, if that's something that comes up for you. It's so funny. I'm somebody who's pretty much an open book, and I'm like, yeah, give me all the hard healing, give me all the intense stuff. And in the past year, and I've always just been like, ready and game to go, and never really could connect personally with the idea that being really vulnerable can be hard for people until this year, until I'm working on something that's really vulnerable for my system. So I very much understand that dynamic and the capacity that is needed to hold the space. But also, these sessions are really cool. The logical part of your mind, this is at least for me, the logical part of my mind loves, and my clients have said this too, but really loves understanding the why behind your experience. It really helps, honestly, in resolving it. It's not just being all in the right brain. Right brain is over here, I guess, or left brain. Yeah, left brain is what I meant. It's not just all in like that energy. It's truly like allowing yourself to be like whole-minded, not just, we just have to tap into this side in order to access these like, deeper things. It's really like lets your whole system like operate as one. And, once we create the new pathway, you get to choose, how you respond to life differently. You leave a session, we've opened up the space, you've done a shit ton of healing, and then you get to step forward in your life. If you see something, happen that used to trigger you, sometimes it won't even phase you. But then, if it's something that you're here to still work with, then you have space between it to be able to say, oh, I'm going to choose to operate differently in this case. And that choosing is actually attainable. I work with people with addiction, and I believe that the root of addiction is trauma. And, addictions or self-sabotage or whatever, are coping mechanisms to keep us safe. And when you can heal the root of the addiction, it's not so hard to change your habits. It makes it more accessible to change your habits, right? So anyway, let me know if that makes sense. It's truly profound. So I do want to address, and I'm just trying to keep an eye on time here for everyone. Someone in the group asked, how is this different from EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping? And so at this point, it's probably clear, but, tapping gets a little bit into the subconscious for sure. But you're still working from the layer of like conscious knowing and, sort of guessing, like this is a limiting belief. So I'm going to work on that limiting belief through the tapping. And the tapping is like accessing the blockages in my system to help them move and come out. But you're not really shifting from the space of the root. So again, I sort of treat tapping, I use tapping, on, if I haven't done it for this, but I could see myself, if I'm having a period of time where my skin is breaking out, now I can see it as like, oh, this, because my body truly treats it as information, like, oh, you're dehydrated, or, your liver is a little backed up or something like that. So now that I know and trust and believe that I can have healthy, clear skin, when I get nervous, when the anxiety might come up, the residual anxiety that, as humans we will have, I could use tapping to help move that along, because the base part of me, the deeper part of me, really believes that I can have clear skin, that clear skin is mine, essentially. So you're identifying the limiting beliefs and trying to really shift from that outer space still, rather than getting to the root, essentially. And, I think it's a beautiful thing to add on or implement, when you're working with something that you already have a hold on. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any more questions about that, I'm happy to explore. But yeah, so if you're feeling stuck in any place, in your life, if you're struggling to step into that next version of yourself, a lot of us in here, I know, have healing businesses, and I've gone through a lot in the past year and work with every one of my clients right now is an entrepreneur. So working a lot with the entrepreneurial space. I would love to hold space for your healing and help guide you through it. I only work with folks one-on-one, as you can imagine. Everyone's stories are unique to them, to you. And right now I have one space open for my 3-month healing container, which is a really high touch container and also includes learning your human design and astrology, your North Node specifically. I use those tools only in my container to help guide and lead and coach. I don't do sessions outside of that. And for the month of July, which I'm pretty sure I dropped it in the comments here, but I'll make sure after this wraps up, I'm running a summer healing special. So it's where you can receive $100 off of a pack of 3 sessions. So, if you're really wanting to, this is really good for you if you're just want to get a hold on something that has been keeping you stuck for a while, or, that you're trying to do something, but you feel a lot of anxiety around it, whatever that could be. This work will shift you really quickly. I recently, I was going to go into some examples, but I feel like I gave you a lot of examples. So I will make sure that you have links for both. And if you're interested in the container, we will hop on a connection call just to make sure that things are, you understand what the program is and what the commitment is from your end. It's definitely high touch, and it's a program. So, but yeah, otherwise, if you just want to try it out, the 3-pack is a really great move. And this will be on sale for the month of July. And yeah, I'm always here to chat. And I love connecting with you. I love this space. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Just make sure you tag me or DM. Okay. Well, I hope you have a beautiful Wednesday, and we'll connect next time.